Welcome everyone to this webinar. It's a pleasure at the Science Diplomacy Center to have you here with us today in this webinar entitled New Science Diplomacy Approaches, Strategies from the Global South. To begin, we would like some opening words from our director, Marcella Ohira, who's actually the deputy director of the who's also the deputy director of the IAI. Welcome, Marcella. Thank you, Claudia. Good afternoon. Good morning. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. On behalf of the Science Diplomacy Center at the IAI, it's a pleasure for us to organize this webinar to talk about the growing importance of the interface between science, policy, diplomacy, and international scientific cooperation. The IAI is an intergovernmental organization. It has always been a science diplomacy tool since its creation 33 years ago. We were created through the wish of 19 governments in the Americas, the parties to the IAI. We aim to promote, coordinate, and develop cooperative, multidisciplinary, and transdisciplinary research, multinational research in areas that governments and the scientific community in the Americas have a common interest in. So it's very important for us to promote science diplomacy and the cooperation between scientists and decision makers in the Americas. And this wish was expressed more strongly 2 years ago when the IAI COP created the Science Diplomacy Center with the real wish to truly support the interface that is so necessary, this interface that is so necessary, and using scientific evidence for informing decision-making in global environmental change. Our Science Diplomacy Center, or SDC, has three priority pillars: capacity building, sharing theoretical frameworks, and using science diplomacy, and a science diplomacy platform to share information, knowledge, materials that can be useful for the communities that want to learn more and use this major tool more often. We're also addressing emerging topics at a time when this type of topic is really important: innovation of science diplomacy, AI, quantum technologies, etc. Also, the IAI needs to work as a facilitator. We need to bring scientists and decision makers together to talk about science, governance, and the governance of these topics, because these are contexts that are gaining in importance worldwide. A very important topic we addressed when we launched the center was the need to create a comprehensive curriculum, because it should include conceptual topics, but also negotiation skills, which is what our colleagues will be talking about, our colleagues from the University of São Paulo. We prepared an open call. The University of São Paulo was selected. We worked with them throughout this year to develop this curriculum. In particular, I would like to invite you to open this material. It's open source material, and everyone can take the online course on the IAI's virtual campus. It's available in 3 languages: Spanish, English, and Portuguese. And there's also a case study booklet. It's 17 case studies that are science diplomacy examples, and they show us how to use this diplomacy in the real world. These are cases from Latin America and the Caribbean, and they address major environmental, social, economic issues, very important in our countries. Topics like mining, transboundary topics, multilateral agreements, biodiversity, conservation. So we want to share the Their use for science diplomacy, diplomacy for science, original concepts, and also new uses. And nowadays, more and more stakeholders are using science diplomacy in their work in the academias, in ministries, government agencies, but also other stakeholders like the private sector, the civil society, and some national governments. So we would like to invite you to read this material and to share it with your communities, because we want to share more and more material, the use of science diplomacy, not just in the Americas, but also regionally and globally. Finally, I would like to especially thank all the panelists that are here with us today. They each have their experience from a country in our continent, working with different sectors and communities. But they share a topic of interest. They want to make their contribution to science, policies, and diplomacy. Thank you so very much, and you're all very welcome to this seminar. Thank you, Marcella, for your words. And 3 languages. You can also listen to this webinar in English or Spanish if you want, or Portuguese. If you want to do so, please go to the bottom of the screen and choose the language of your choice. Thank you, Marcella. It's a pleasure for me to be the Master of Ceremonies. I'm Claudia Alarcón. I'm a STEP Fellow. And please let me share a video prepared by high authorities for this webinar, celebrating the launch of the curriculum Marcella has just told us about.
Hi, my name is Kim Montgomery, and I am the Director of International Affairs and Science Diplomacy at the American Association for the Advancement of Science, or AAAS. Along with my work at AAAS, I have the privilege of serving on the IAI's Science Diplomacy Center's Advisory Board. The Science Diplomacy Center is involved with a number of activities, including science diplomacy training. What is science diplomacy? It is a tool used by nations and organizations to advance their diplomatic objectives. Who's involved in science diplomacy? Typically, diplomats from national governments are involved in science diplomacy, but multilateral and intergovernment organizations like the IAI and non-government organizations like AAAS are also science diplomacy players. And increasing, we're seeing companies and tech titans as science diplomacy players as well. Why science diplomacy? We are in an era of disruption. The scientific and technological landscape is being transformed. The geopolitical environment that science and technology operate in has become increasingly adversarial and complex. To reflect that, AAAS and the Royal Society released a new science diplomacy framework in a report entitled Science Diplomacy in an Era of Disruption. This era demands science diplomacy. It demands it to meet the challenges that we're facing during this disruptive era, but also to seize the opportunities, and there are opportunities in this time. Thank you so much.
Science diplomacy is an approach that brings together science and international relations to face the major global challenges from cooperation and trust. Equity is essential in science. Knowledge must be a universal and shared right. Science must be advanced and for it to be open without losing sight of these essential values. From the National Secretariat of Science and Technology in Guatemala, we firmly believe that science knows no borders. This is why we promote the scientific regional and international collaboration by aligning our efforts with national priorities to have a true impact on our people. We acknowledge the Science Diplomacy Center of the Inter-American Institute for Global Change Research, the IAI, as a key partner to strengthen cooperation in the Americas and promote the training of professionals that include science and decision-making. Congratulations to the IAI for launching the program called Collaborating for Transforming, available in Spanish, English, and Spanish. I would like to invite all of you to make the most of this tool to strengthening science diplomacy is promoting a fairer and more prepared future. Together, let's get science to lead our road
Hola,
to
me llamo
science
Julián.
and America
Yo
transforming.
trabajo para la Comisión Europea, donde
Good
coordino
morning,
el
I'm
tema de la
Jean-Marco
diplomacia
Muller. I
científica.
work at the European
Yo
Commission and
quería
I coordinate
utilizar
the
este
topic
pequeño
of
video
science
para
diplomacy.
felicitar
I would like to
al
make the most of this
Instituto
opportunity
Interamericano
to
para la
congratulate
Investigación
the Inter-American
de
Institute for Global
Cambio
Change
Global por
Research
haber tomado esa
for
iniciativa de
having
crear un currículo
decided
para
to
la
create
diplomacia
a
científica.
curriculum for science
En este mundo tan
diplomacy.
fragmentado, tan
It's
polarizado, el
such
tema
a
de diplomacia
polarized,
científica es cada vez más
fragmented world.
importante.
So science diplomacy
Y obviamente
is more
América Latina es
is
una
growing in
región muy activa
importance.
en ese tema,
Clearly, Latin
una región
America is very
emergente
active in
con
this area. It's an
muchos
emerging
actores, con
region with
países
many
que están
stakeholders,
desarrollando
with
estrategias
countries that are
diplomáticas científicas.
developing science
Y también
diplomacy
para nosotros,
strategies.
desde el punto de vista
And
de la Unión
also,
Europea, esta es
uh,
una
from the
iniciativa muy
European
importante
Union,
porque
this is a very
nosotros
important
queremos
initiative
utilizar la
because we want to
diplomacia
use
científica
science diplomacy
para interactuar
to
con los países
interact
de las
with
Américas. Y por eso es tan
countries in the
importante
Americas.
tener
This is why, for us, it's
como
so
un socio al
important
otro lado, de
to
tener gente al
have
otro lado que
a
se han
partner or
entrenado en
people
el
on the
tema de
other
la diplomacia
side that
científica.
have trained
Y
in
por
science
eso
diplomacy.
nosotros damos la bienvenida a
This
esa
is why
iniciativa
we
de,
welcome
de
this
crear este
initiative
currículo de
of
diplomacia
creating
científica
this science
y
diplomacy
nosotros estamos
curriculum.
dispuestos de
And we're
trabajar con
also
ustedes conjuntamente para
willing
un
to
mundo
work with
mejor.
you
Muchas
together
gracias.
in order to create a better world. Thank you. Well, thank you to the AAAS representative. Thank you to the Secretariat of Guatemala and the European Commission as well. Thank you for your videos. It's great to have you here with us remotely. Without further ado, I would like to give the floor to my colleague Gabriela Ferreira from the University of Sao Paulo, who's also a STEP fellow, together with Amancio Oliveira. They will be presenting this curriculum we're talking about so much. Gabi, you have the floor. Thank you, Clau.
Vou falar em português.
Sorry, I'm
Desculpem
going to
por isso.
speak
Muito
in
obrigada,
Portuguese.
Cláudia. É prazer estar aqui hoje como Step
Thank you
Fellow
so
do
much,
IAI.
Claudia. It's a
Realmente é uma
pleasure to be here as an IAI STEP
utilizar
fellow.
o curso de diplomacia científica
It's
criado pela
truly
Universidade
an
de São
opportunity
Paulo
to
durante as
use
atividades do
this
Centro
Science
de
Diplomacy
Diplomacia
Center created by
Científica.
the University of Sao
Então, eu
Paulo
gostaria de, no momento, dar a palavra para o Dr.
within
Amancio
the activities of
Oliveira,
the
do
Science
Grupo de
Diplomacy
Projeto junto
Center.
à professora Janina
I would
Vanucci,
like
doutora
to
Janina
give the
Vanucci,
floor
e ao
to
final eu venho para fazer uma palavra sobre o
Amancio
que é ser uma
Oliveira,
Step Fellow que
and
consegue
then
utilizar esse
I'll
material tão
come
rico
back
aí
to tell you a bit
organizado
about
pela Universidade de
what it
São
means
Paulo
to be
através do
an
CONICET
IAI
e
STEP
da
fellow
InScience.
and how we can make the most of this useful material prepared by the University of Sao Paulo. Thank you so much, Gabriela. Thank you, Claudia. Thank you, Marcella. It's an honor to be here today. And the University of Sao Paulo and BAEMI, it was an honor to work on this. Because probably one of the main challenges we have in the area of science diplomacy, as you can see in your own daily work, is persuading the authorities about the importance of implementing science diplomacy in different academic activities, government agencies, and also in the civil society and the private sector. Therefore, this initiative is very important. It sets a clear path in this awareness-raising process. And actually, at the University of Sao Paulo, we have just had to elect a president of the university. And one of the candidates did include science diplomacy within international cooperation. This candidate thought that it was one of the main arguments for the election. And I am so very happy to see that, because what has been done at the University of Sao Paulo also has to do with this partnership. So thank you so much, Marcella, as usual. Something Marcella has highlighted is that we were trying to include, to combine negotiation aspects, the theoretical and practical aspects as well. Therefore, this curriculum that which we can describe later on, we present some very practical case studies. Many of them have to do with the environment, but not just that. Also, AI, for instance, because we want to show the different nuances, the types of science diplomacy and their use in negotiation processes. This is why we use the role play methodology with real cases in order to provide a foundation for this training with a variety regarding topics on science diplomacy and also regarding their success rate. I think it was a very useful experience. Understanding cases in which science diplomacy was not as active as it should have been for the negotiation to be successful. So we have this set of studies with lots of variety, and I believe this is particularly interesting material for learning about science diplomacy. And this is not everything, of course. There's other materials, teaching materials, books, other materials that can be created from the course. Because our students and us as teachers already use this course, it's great that it's open source because it can be actually used by many people. Now, I would like to give the floor to Professor Ferreira, who's the expert and who really understands the content of what we've done. Thank you once again, and I will be here listening to the conversation. Thank you.
Obrigada, professora Amancio. Agustina, perdão, vejo que a sua mão está levantada.
Thank you, Professor Amancio. Sorry, your hand was up.
Foi prazer, então, a gente ter a oportunidade de, enquanto KN, enquanto
So
SENACYT,
it was a pleasure
esses estudos de caso das Américas,
with Inside and others to organize these case studies about the Americas. And as Professor Amancio said, our objective was to showcase science diplomacy as an element to facilitate negotiations among different stakeholders. The world of science and policy is suffering, given the different what's happening in the world nowadays. There are different stakeholders that can have an influence on public policies and foreign policy as well. So we wanted to map the cases that could provide elements to help us understand the tool and its capacity. We also work with simulation games based on the case studies. They can be used online or in person as well, in in-person interactions. And they really help us in our workshops. And they are very useful because if you're trying to appropriate the concept of science diplomacy as a tool, this course provides you with many opportunities. As Professor Amancio said, this course was organized considering the need to make it flexible, adaptable, and also it's a living course. It is updated. We have the first 17 case studies, but there might be more that might come up later on to reflect the work done in the region and how science diplomacy is implemented in the Americas, so that we can keep the course updated that really shows how what is happening in reality.
tentando encapsular a prática, mas o
It's a
contrário.
course
Como a
created
prática acontece, como
not
ela
just to include
informa a
theory and
teoria.
practice,
Nesse
but
sentido,
also to
eu sei que a
show
Marcella vai falar
what
mais
actually
sobre
happens
isso, mas
in
quero já deixar
practice
aqui aberto a todos os
and
colegas
how
que
practice
têm
in
aí
turn includes
estudos
the
de caso,
theory.
que acham que podem ser
I think Marcella
interessantes
will tell us
para
a bit
serem
more about
adicionados no
this.
curso, que podem abrilhantar mais a nossa perspectiva de como
Maybe there
as
are some case studies
Américas
that you find interesting
movimentam
that
a
we can
diplomacia
add
científica,
following this
conectam a
perspective, and
ciência à
also to
prática
show
das relações internacionais,
how science
lembrando também que hoje
diplomacy
em dia
is being implemented
poucas
in the
políticas
Americas,
públicas
how
mexem
it
com a
is promoted
domésticas,
in
elas
international
realmente têm
relations.
os stakes
Let's
internacionais
remember
para
that
serem
nowadays there are very few public
movimentados,
policies
visualizados
that
e
are
organizados.
just
Então, fica o
domestic in
convite para
nature,
todos os colegas que podem aí contribuir no futuro
because there's
para
also this
aumentar,
international
melhorar
trend.
e alinhar cada
So
vez mais
this is
esse curso
open. You
fantástico que
can
é aí pela
collaborate as
capacidade de
colleagues
organizar
with real
aos
cases in
interesses
order
das
to
pessoas
better
que
improve this
utilizam ele.
amazing
Muito obrigada.
course organized by the IAI. Thank you so much.
Perfecto. Muchas gracias, doctora Amancio.
Great.
Muchas gracias,
Thank you,
Gaby.
Dr.
Gracias a la
Amancio.
Universidad de Sao Paulo en
Thank you
general y a
so
Gaby
much,
por desarrollar su currículo.
Gabby, and
En el
thank
chat
you
pueden encontrar el
to
link al libro.
the
Copienlo
University and the IAF for
y
developing
lo pueden
this
pegar en su
course.
servidor y
You
pueden
can
encontrar
I have
curso.
just
También
pasted the
siempre
link
pueden
in the chat.
comunicarse
Please
conmigo
go ahead
ahí
and
y con
download it.
otros más.
You can also talk to the
Y,
IAI if you want more information.
En el panel siguiente podremos
In
platicar
the
un poco más
next
del uso en
panel,
práctica
we can
y también qué se
talk a
puede
bit more
hacer con
about the use and
estos,
practice and
no nada
also
más
what we
estos
can
cursos en
do with
línea,
this.
también se
It's
puede
not
usar
just an
para
online
perfiles
course.
presenciales,
It can also be
de los
used
cuales
to organize
podremos platicar
in-person
más
workshops,
adelante.
and we'll be talking about this later on.
Doy pie al segundo video.
Now, I would like to
de cualidades para
play the second video where we have
Ok, perfecto.
the
Hasta luego, doctora Amancio. Muchas gracias por su
statements.
participación.
Thank you, Dr. Amancio.
Pasamos
See you
al
later.
segundo
Thank you
video.
so much for your participation. Let's watch the second video with greetings.
Desde el Ministerio de Defensa Nacional de la República
The Ministry of National Defense of Uruguay would like to promote science diplomacy in the understanding that it's an essential tool for in the area of defense. As a small country, this also helps us regarding defense, health or climate capacity building, and also in the territory. This can be done in coordination with the civil society, the military society, and the academia. Positioning ourselves as a bridge between science and diplomacy is our hope. We're willing to lead this space with commitment. Uruguay has the necessary conditions to become the driver behind this transformation. Government of Peru, dear colleagues from the Inter-American Institute for Global Change Research and from the Science Diplomacy Center of the IAI. It's an honor to address the authorities, scientists, diplomats, and decision makers that participate in this major webinar that is launching the new Science Diplomacy Training course for CONICET and Peru. It's very important to be part of this regional initiative that strengthens our capacities to face global challenges through international collaboration and science. Science diplomacy is strategic because it allows us to position our capacities in priority topics such as the Amazon, the tropical Andes, the marine biodiversity, and climate change adaptation. It also helps us integrate scientific knowledge in our public policies and strengthen our presence in international fora. The Inter-American Institute for Global Change Research, with its Science Diplomacy Center, leads this agenda in the Americas. It has trained decision makers and scientists in Panama, Paraguay, and Brazil, creating effective collaboration networks and evidence-based policies. In 2026, Peru will host this major regional workshop. So I would like to invite scientists, diplomats, policymakers, and representatives from different sectors to actively participate. This is a unique opportunity to strengthen our capacities, share experiences, and build collaboration that will benefit our entire continent. Thank you so much. Warm greetings to everyone. I would like to thank all the acknowledgements received by the Inter-American Institute for Global Change Research and its Science Diplomacy Center for the launch of the curriculum on science diplomacy. In this confusing, unstable, and complex of contradictory messages that we witnessed in every sector, the private sector, public sector, companies, civil society, economy, values. And this interacts with huge challenges, not just from the perspective of a planetary ecosystem, but also given the general conditions that should minimize conflicts and ensure a more harmonized coexistence. So now, more than ever, we need science diplomacy to support informed decision-making. I'm particularly thinking about how useful this can be for foreign policy, which should be led by a more comprehensive perspective. Science diplomacy aims to strengthen capacity building knowledge, but also the conversation of different sectors, the dialogue between sectors. And in this sense, we need to prepare ourselves, not just in knowledge, but also in soft skills. Clearly, the IAI and its Science Diplomacy Center are now making this suggestion that will allow us to come closer and to acknowledge each other as part of the region, acknowledging which are our common goals and challenges to be able to contribute to finding these solutions we need now. Once again, congratulations to the Inter-American Institute for Global Change Research, its Science Diplomacy Center, and I know this invaluable tool will create a lot of interest. Thank you. Thank you again to all the authorities that have supported us. Would like to tell you a bit more about this process. So this brings us to the second part of the session, celebrities in the science diplomacy sphere. Our moderator is Javier Garcia Garza, who has been a professional supporting the government of Canada. He's held other positions, director, now advisor on agriculture, food, and the interface between science and policy. Without further ado, Javier Gracia, you have the floor to moderate this amazing panel, and thank you to all the panelists for accepting the invitation. Thank you, Claudia. I hope you can hear me well. Thank you, everyone who's here participating in this webinar. And in particular, thank you to all the panelists that are here today and that will be here with us today sharing their experience, ideas about science diplomacy. The aim of this panel is to explore the value of capacity building in science diplomacy through real experiences in different countries in the region of Latin America and the Caribbean, with an emphasis on how to implement and adapt the curriculum we have been talking about in the last few minutes. through the contributions of panelists, of our panelists, we will try to see how science diplomacy in Latin America and the Caribbean is advancing through specific approaches and experiences. Let's start with the people that have worked with the curriculum directly, and then we will be talking to the panelists who have implemented this curriculum somehow in workshops or national processes. Our first panelist is someone I really love. I've had the opportunity to work with her. We did so last year in Washington, D.C. This is Dr. Luz Kumba. She has been a STEP fellow at the IAI and also a AAAS fellow. She's the founder of Sci Policy Global Strategies based in the United States of America. Luz is an expert in science diplomacy. She has participated in several trainings on the topic with several institutions, and she knows this curriculum very well, owing to her participation in the relevant workshop when we were together in Washington, D.C. last year. There, she assessed and contributed expert recommendations based on her experience. Luz, I'm not sure if you have slides to share with us. If you don't, maybe we can go to the questions directly. Okay. So based on this experience you had last year evaluating the curriculum, and also based on your general experience, what distinguishes this curriculum from other science diplomacy, international science diplomacy programs you know? Well, first of all, thank you so much, Javier. I really love you too. Thank you, Marcella, Claudia, Gabriela, and the entire IAI team. It's also an honor to participate in these activities organized and led by you. I love working with you, and I love this opportunity to reflect about how science diplomacy impacts public policy making, which is my area of expertise, and also how it affects finding specific solutions to address environmental challenges faced by the United States and Latin America and the Caribbean. I'm from Puerto Rico, from the Caribbean, so I'm very interested in that area, besides my work and experience with the United States. Well, regarding your question, what distinguishes this curriculum? Well, first of all, it's a truly regional approach, and we truly needed this. Because unlike many international programs that address science diplomacy from a global or general perspective, this course in particular has been specifically designed to address Latin American realities, which are very different from the ones in the United States, Africa, Asia, etc. So this course acknowledges the political dynamics in the region, cultural dynamics, which are very important, especially for me as a science communicator. We need to communicate science in a culturally relevant way. And also we need to understand the social and environmental challenges faced by the region. There was something else I really liked about this course when we assessed it in Washington last year. It uses real cases, things that have actually happened in the region. So this course, as you have said, has been developed from case studies from the real world. And this allows participants to better understand how science works as a bridge in this international collaboration to manage natural resources for global environmental change, including indigenous peoples and ancestral knowledge, which is very important in the region, in particular for countries surrounding the Amazon. So these processes are essential for decision making. There was something else I really liked, using immersive and participatory methodology that was applied as well as the methodology. We had a lot of fun with the negotiations, with the simulations, the practical exercises. There was a bit of tension in the negotiations because we were very realistic. And the method we were implementing has very much to do with my experience in science diplomacy, because I work as a public policy advisor for the US government. I've worked in multilateral spaces and through my consulting program as well, which is basically a new company, Policy Global Strategies. One of my challenges is to translate the scientific evidence in a practical and sustainable way to share it with my clients, the people I advise. So also, it has a global south perspective. As the innovation diplomacy modules, which I really liked as well, it has been created with a global south perspective, and that's essential for producing knowledge and also strengthening leading capacities. Finally, I really like the flexible format. People work a lot, we have many things to do, but it's accessible. You can take it online, it's for free. And all of that is then very important. It also provides different types of training. Maybe in-person workshops, I would love to participate. But also I loved the case study co-creation process because that evolves as time goes by, and so many things have happened this year. So I really like it. I really like that it provides a certificate. It's like it encourages people to take a course like this. So I think it's an amazing tool to democratize access to education on science diplomacy. Thank you, Luz. Okay, every panelist will have around 10 minutes. So I'll ask a two-way question because you've already talked about the value of flexibility. Could you tell me a bit more about that? But also, I would like to know the following. You traveled to Washington. You talked about the simulation process. Yes, we implemented such an exercise regarding how the curriculum worked and the learning that takes place after simulating this type of situation. Okay, flexibility. Can you tell us a bit more about that? That first, but also, which are the elements that you found were important regarding learning? So the main lessons learned in that simulation process. I think it's very important now that the curriculum is being implemented in other countries.
Pues mira, la flexibilidad, yo
Well,
creo pues
flexibility,
sobre todo en el tema online, ¿verdad? Cuando
especially when you take the course online, because you can, pause a course, come back to it later on, etc. That's really important. That's what I was talking about. And also, when they organize an in-person team, I know that Marcella and the IEA team are absolutely willing to implement the course in any country in Latin America, and they're doing so. So that's the other thing I was referring to when I talked about flexibility. And the other question was regarding the learnings. What you learned in the simulation and that might be something that another student might profit from. Okay, learnings. Understanding innovation diplomacy, which is quite new, in particular here in the United States. Understanding that we can use case studies, specific examples to understand this a bit more. I'm a communicator. I really liked the scientific communication lesson on the online course. I loved them doing that. It's very important within the course. It was a great lesson. And also negotiation for sustainable development. I really liked the case studies we saw, the negotiations. They were based on sustainable development and global environmental change. And these are two essential topics given the state of the world. So we can also see how this curriculum is connected with is connecting science and real spaces, decision makers, international cooperation. And this is what I've been doing throughout my career, how we can connect all this to policymakers, public policymakers, diplomats, politicians. So this type of course allows the AI to support governments, universities, and organizations to translate science and include it in their strategies, in negotiations, and cooperation models. Our group, the one that evaluated the course in Washington, was quite diverse. Most were scientists, but there was a bit of everything. There were neuroscientists, environmental scientists, etc. And I think that this really enriched the debate and the lessons we were learning. It also, in a way, changed the approach of the course. It was great to have different perspectives. You as well, you have so much more experience, having people that have a different perspective, and that really helped complement the course. So I think that everything we learned can be implemented in professional contexts in the region throughout our careers. And I know now that a course like this has the potential to become a reference in the region, in particular for capacity building for leaders in governments, public policymakers. Thank you, Luz, and thank you for reminding me that I'm old now. Thank you. So, key points of what you have said. This curriculum is very flexible, it adapts, it has a practical and regional approach, and it clearly connects scientific knowledge producers with decision makers to bridge that gap. It includes simulations. Simulation is a tool that truly helps us advance complex decision making. Most of all, it has a regional perspective that is very important, and also it is flexible and it can be accessed by everyone. Thank you so much. Okay. I think that Dr. Julián Baez is not with us. He's the director of the regional office of the WMO for the Americas in Paraguay. Unfortunately, he hasn't been able to attend today. So now I would like to give the floor to Mrs. Leire Leguina Casas, who works at the Scientific Advice and Diplomacy Unit of the Spanish Federation for Science and Technology in Spain. So by way of introduction, I would like to say that clearly the authorities on the videos talked about this interest in science diplomacy, which is happening in many parts of the world. And this interest we have here in Latin America, although I'm in Canada, has increased, has grown beyond the region. And that also includes European institutions like the one you represent. So I don't know, I'm not sure if you have slides to share with us or if we can already ask you some questions. Let's go to the questions. Okay. So, why are there institutions outside Latin America and the Caribbean, such as the case of the FECYT in Spain? Why are they interested in learning about how this science diplomacy is developing in Latin America and the Caribbean? What do you think about this? Thank you so much, Javier. Also, thank you for inviting us to this webinar. Thank you to the IAI. We are very close as institutions regarding how we work and all that, and we have seen this throughout time, and it's a pleasure for me to be here. As I was saying, I represent the Spanish Foundation for Science and Technology. Maybe I can explain why we're here. We work under the Ministry of Science, Innovation and Universities from Spain. But we are more dynamic than a ministry. We find it easier to implement strategic projects. So many times, the ministry asks us to do something. For instance, in open science, we're in charge of scientific community, as Luz was saying, which is so important, as Luz was saying. And also for science diplomacy, we created the National Scientific Communication Strategy, the Open Science Strategy. There's also science diplomacy and scientific advice. And there's another one that is very important. At FECYT, we have been working for years on diplomacy. We started working on this 10 years ago. And our approach, and how did we start working with diplomacy? Well, through Europe. First of all, we talked about the importance of working in the region because it was very important for us to participate in European projects on diplomacy and learning from the good practices and good examples set by European colleagues. Many of the items I implemented in those projects have been implemented in Spain as well. And I can tell you currently that Spain is an example for other European colleagues because we have really bought this topic. We love it. And we have created a major science diplomacy network. And we have gone beyond because now we're also providing advice because diplomacy is part of the science for policy ecosystem. And it's similar to what we've done in the last few years because something very important that we have developed in science diplomacy is training. 10 years later, with the European colleagues, we're still mapping which courses are organized where, how can we train more diplomats. We are always updating our training offers. Well, Claudia, Marcella know this very well. A few years ago, we organized a European science diplomacy course focused on science diplomacy in Europe. It was an online course, and more than 6,000 people have taken the course in the last few years. So we can clearly see how important it is to train these new people in this interface between science and diplomacy. You need different types of skills, and this is why it's important to have a course or courses. Also, we pay a lot of attention to what is being done in Latin America and by our colleagues in other countries. Why? Well, first, because we want like a newer perspective. Everything is more written in Europe because we have been doing this for some time already. This is why it helps us a lot to work with Latin American countries. This year, we organized a 4-day course in Montevideo on diplomacy and advice. It wasn't a course, it was a mutual learning experience because we learned from each other to see, and we wanted to see what was happening there. And the AI participated there. The idea was to keep learning and to try and find new ways to face global challenges that we all face. And the thing is that our perspective is more rigid in Europe. Great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Leire. I have another question. I would like to say, to introduce the question. Well, unfortunately, Dr. Baez was not here, but in May of this year, they organized a workshop. It was actually a number of events. It was a science diplomacy workshop focused on water, but in particular droughts. Droughts have severely affected the region in Paraguay, Uruguay, and that region in particular in South America. In the workshop included several simulations. They worked with a curriculum. I also know that the FECYT recently published a document about droughts and the importance of the connection between what happened in May in Paraguay and what hopefully we'll be able to do in the region among different countries affected by basins and all that. And also affected by the impact of global change, where we sometimes have droughts or floodings, it depends. Brazil as well. So based on this context, how can these efforts enrich each other? If we consider Spain and Latin America, in the area of drought in particular, how can we support each other to address global change challenges? Well, of course, having the reports and documents prepared in both regions, Europe and Latin America. We need good quality reports, and collaborating is essential so that we can develop good practices and models for both regions. Let me just share my screen for a second.
Sí, bueno, está, sí, ya sale ahora.
Vale. FECYT, mi organización, la Fundación
Española para la Ciencia y la Tecnología, the Spanish Organization for Science and Technology, we're coordinating the Science and Technology Office at the Congress.
Ya. Digo, es que como que la palabra está cortada. Oficina, la O.
Es así el logo, es Oficina C.
That's a logo. It's Office C. We're so modern that it looks like a truncated O. Okay. Everyone tells us, because it's like there's something wrong there, but it's like that. Oficina C, with that logo. Okay. And this is what I told you about. We're also providing scientific advice. We have created several institutions in Spain to advise the executive branch, the embassies about science diplomacy, but also the Congress. And this is an office we have in Parliament, in the Congress of Representatives. Here you have some open reports covering several topics. It takes around 6 months to prepare each report with a very clear methodology, because we try to be as neutral as possible, because they're meant to be read by MPs. So we include international and national experts. How do we choose the topics? These are topics that MPs need to know about because they need to pass laws. The public opinion is paying attention to these topics, and of course, drought is very important. We've had terrible drought in Spain, in particular in the 90s, but it's still a huge problem.
estudio en profundidad desde muchas
This
perspectivas
recent
ambientales,
study
económicas,
focuses on
sociales,
several
jurídicas
perspectives,
y del
environmental,
fenómeno.
economic, social, legal perspectives of
Y entonces, siguiendo,
droughts.
voy a dejar de compartir, perdón. A ver si lo he hecho bien. Un segundito, no, aquí. Ya está, aquí ya estoy. Pues sabiendo cómo es de importante, al final son fenómenos que
We know that
afectan,
these
ya
are
verás,
important
entonces, bueno, con
phenomena
lo cual,
that affect different
teniendo
regions.
estos informes ya en circulación y teniendo
Therefore,
detectados
we already
tantos
have these
especialistas en
reports,
ambos lados, creo que sería muy
and we have
importante
detected so many experts on both
organizar
sides.
pues, webinarios como
It's
este,
very important to
mesas redondas,
organize
porque es que
webinars like this
realmente
one
la
or
información que tenemos de un
roundtables to
lado y del
share the
otro y
information we
poder
have
unir
on
mundos
both
para poder
sides
ayudarnos
of
en
the
temas así,
Atlantic.
porque como se ve, estamos trabajando en lo mismo.
Because
Sí,
as you can see, we're
gracias,
working on the
Leire.
same topics.
Voy a resumir
Thank you,
o
Leire.
enfocarme
Okay,
solamente en uno de los puntos
let
que
me
fuiste,
just
lo cual
focus on
considero
one of
sumamente
your points,
importante
which I think is
en la colaboración
essential
que existe y en lo que puede existir en un
regarding
futuro
potential
hacia
collaboration
hacia el
and future
futuro, la cuestión
collaboration.
de seguir aprendiendo sobre lo que está sucediendo, independientemente
The
de la
need that we
madurez
have
en
to
la que se
keep
encuentre
learning,
este concepto
regardless
de
of
diplomacia
how
científica. Creo
mature the
que
concept of
la
science
oportunidad
diplomacy
de
is.
aprender de cómo se está desarrollando el
I think it's an
pensamiento que
opportunity to
sucede a
see
nivel
how
regional, tanto de una región como de la otra, cómo se
regional
can enriquecen uno más en
thinking
cuanto a las
is developing. I
oportunidades
think both
de cómo
regions can help
establecer y
each other to
fortalecer
see
tanto el desarrollo de capacidades como el
different opportunities for
entendimiento
capacity
y la
building,
aplicación comercial
understanding,
de la diplomacia científica,
applying science
porque a final
diplomacy,
de cuentas vivimos en este
because
planeta todos
in the
juntos
end,
y
we live on the planet all
la
together.
cuestión de usar la ciencia para la toma de
And
decisiones
using
es una
science
cosa
for
en la que
decision
todos tenemos un
making
desafío y
is
en la que creo que
something
todos
that
nos
is a
podemos
challenge
ayudar
for all of us. And it's
independientemente
something
de
that
qué
we can
tan
help each
maduro
other with,
esté un país o una
regardless
región
of
versus la
the
otra, cuestión de la
progress
aplicación de la
made
diplomacia
by
científica.
each country when it comes to
Nosotros, quiero
implementing
nada más
science
mencionar que
diplomacy.
uno de nuestros miembros de este comité del que presido, del
One of the
comité asesor
members of the committee,
de
I
diplomacia
chair
científica, Marga, no
the
recuerdo
advisory
su
committee of the
apellido,
Science
pero
Diplomacy Center. It's Marga. I
es
can't remember
parte
her
de
last name now,
es uno de
but
nuestros miembros
she's one of our members.
exacta, exacta.
Sí, tenemos mucha relación con ella también,
Pues
sí.
bien,
Yes,
ella es
yes,
parte
we
de
work with
nuestro
her
equipo
quite a
también
lot,
que
and
está
she's
asesorando
part of our team
IAEA
as
en la
well.
cuestión de diplomacia científica. Gracias, Leire, una vez
And she's
más. Y
advising the
paso
IAI
ahora
on science
al siguiente
diplomacy. Thank you, Leire.
panelista, el doctor Ian Caballero González, del
Now we have
SENACYT en
Dr.
Panamá.
Yen Caballero
Es el
Gonzalez from the
coordinador del
SENACYT,
proyecto
Panama.
Política Centroamericana para la
He
Ciencia,
coordinates
Tecnología e
the
Innovación.
Central American Policy for
Recientemente hubo un
Science
taller
project, for
que
Science,
ya
Technology
hablaremos
and
un poco más
Innovation
tarde, en
project,
el que
SENACYT.
se aplicó este currículum del que hemos estado hablando.
This
Y
curriculum
dentro de este
was
proyecto nacional
implemented by
de
him,
política centroamericana para la ciencia,
was
tecnología
implemented
e
in a
innovación,
workshop, and within
y
this
es algo que
regional
está
project for
coordinando el doctor
Science,
Caballero
Technology and
González.
Innovation,
Creo
which
que
is
ustedes
led
tienen
by Dr.
una presentación
Jen Caballero Gonzalez.
que nos va a hacer
Dr.
para darnos un
Caballero, I
poco de
think you have
contexto
some
antes de
slides
pasar a un par de
to
preguntas. ¿Es así, doctor Caballero?
contextualize the topic. Is that the case?
Muchísimas gracias, Javier, por supuesto. Tenemos
Thank you so
unos
much,
cuantos slides
Javier.
como para hacer el contexto y luego que la
Yes, we
conversación
do have a
tenga
few
un sentido.
slides
Ante todo, pues muchas gracias
to
al IAI, a
contextualize the
Marcella, a
debate. Thank you so
Gabriela,
much, the
a
IAI,
ustedes, al equipo
Marcela,
completo
Gabriela,
por la
you,
oportunidad que nos dan,
and the entire team for
más que todo
this
el proyecto de poder
opportunity,
comentar un poco lo que se ha estado haciendo en la región
so
centroamericana y la
that
Caribeña.
I can tell
Si me
you what has
permiten,
been
brevemente
done in
comparto
Central
y
America.
hacemos un contexto de lo que estamos aquí conversando.
I
¿Sí?
just need a few minutes to contextualize the debate.
Adelante.
Me dicen, por favor, si se observa en pantalla completa, que saben que eso siempre nos da ahí algo que hacer. Sí, ok.
Sí. Lo vemos bien.
Ok, gracias.
Yes, we can
Bueno,
see the
como
screen.
bien ha dicho, muchísimas gracias, Javier. Como bien lo ha
Well, thank you
dicho,
so much,
nosotros
Javier.
coordinamos un área
As you have said,
interesante, que es el
Javier, we
área de
coordinate
la
an
parte
interesting
operativa,
area,
la parte que lleva
which
la
is the
unidad
operational
de
area
trabajo
led
con
by
acciones
the
planificadas para el
working
proyecto Política
unit with
Centroamericana de
actions for the open and inclusive STI Central American policy. Sorry, it's a bit long, but I had to say the full thing. It's a fascinating project. It has an objective as an initiative. This has been almost fully attained because it will finish in February 2026. And we are now finalizing reports and all that. So that's where the project is headed. We aim to strengthen the capacities of key stakeholders in science, technology, and innovation, in particular in Central America and the Dominican Republic. We interact with national science and technology councils, with national secretariats of science, technology, and innovation, with agencies, committees, with a very interesting and heterogeneous universe for the region. The project is organized into 3 areas or stages. In stage 1, we were able to conduct an international state-of-the-art diagnosis and one in each country, in the Central American region and the Dominican Republic. This led to creating documents. These are open documents because this is open STI. You can see the documents on the project website. And here I'm sharing the link with you. Please have a look at these documents and share them as well. Based on this information, and this is what's interesting about how we work with the IAI, and we would like to truly thank the IAI because they have been strategic partners with each Central American country. During stage 3, we organized in-person webinars and a regional training program. To do all this, we had to implement an assertive communication process. This is what Gabriela Montenegro from Guatemala said. We need communication that will allow us to create trust. This is a technical project with a social impact, a political connection, but it cannot be implemented if the parties do not trust each other. Although the project was led by the Republic of Panama through the SENACYT, in this project we needed to directly interact with the authorities of the different countries. We needed to be sure that the region shares knowledges. So we needed an honest conversation. Stage 2, we created an open and inclusive CTI regional policy, and also we signed agreements. Each country signed the agreements with its authorities in the city of Panama in March 2025. This has allowed us to connect different agencies in Central America and the Dominican Republic. And we are seeing science from a diplomatic perspective. Also, we need to see how diplomacy allows us to have an honest and straightforward conversation. This has been possible through the participation of the IAI. With the IAI, we organized a workshop in El Salvador very recently, where we focused on science diplomacy and how this mutual cooperation level can lead the region to become a leader in some areas. I completely agree with Luz
y conocimientos amplios y diversos
The,
permiten justamente una
we in our
diferenciación,
area we
pero también
have
permiten resolver los problemas del ciudadano del día a
knowledge
día,
and wisdom
que no
which are
solamente se
quite
ve a la ciencia
diverse, and
como
that
algo de
distinguishes
la
us, but
élite,
also
sino que
because
justamente
all
el
of this
ciudadano de a
helps
pie de cada uno de
citizens
estos
solve their
países
problems. We need
pueda
to
a
remember
través de
that
la
this is
ciencia
not an
resolver los
elite
problemas.
thing.
Eso ha sido
Science should help
algo que ha
citizens
permitido un
solve their
diálogo
everyday
franco y
problems.
directo con todas las autoridades de la región
This has
centroamericana.
allowed us to
En
have
la
an
primera
honest and
etapa,
straightforward
2
conversation with
estudios,
every Central
diálogos a nivel de
Central American
webinars y
authority.
talleres. En una segunda etapa, marco
Also,
regional. Y en
stage
una
2
tercera
webinars
etapa,
and
que ya la estamos
workshops,
por
but
concluir,
regionally.
la
And
parte de formación del
stage
talento
3
humano. Y
almost
allí
ready.
justamente el IAE ha sido un socio estratégico como un organismo
Workshop.
intergubernamental que nos
And
ha
the IAI
permitido
has been a
esa robustez
strategic
en cuanto a la
partner as an
adopción de la evidencia
intergovernmental
científica y cómo
organization that
ésta
has
puede
allowed
aportar a
us
la realidad de nuestros distintos
to
países. Yo creo que lo dejo hasta
use
ahí
science
y
diplomacy
abierto a las
to
consultas.
improve
Sí,
the reality
gracias,
in
Julián.
our countries. Thank you.
De hecho, tenía dos preguntas, pero creo que viendo el tiempo, una la has
Yes, I
abordado
have
bastante bien en tu
two
presentación y
questions, but
era
we
el
don't have
por
much time.
qué
One you have
CONICET
addressed
consideró
why
importante
the
incluir la diplomacia
SENACYT
científica. Creo que ya diste
considers that it's important to
fue
include
bastante
science
claro
diplomacy. I
eso.
think you've talked about
Te
this
invito a
already.
añadir algo si quieres, pero sí me
Of
gustaría,
course, you can
como
add more
pregunta
information
que
if
te
you
voy a
would
hacer, la única
like to.
pregunta es, ¿cómo
But also,
resultó el
and I think it's the
fortalecimiento de
only
las
question, what can
capacidades
you tell us about
después de ese taller
capacity
en el
building
que lanzaron
after
y
the
estuvieron
workshop
hablando
where
sobre
you
este
launched
proyecto en particular para toda
this project,
Centroamérica?
in particular for
Y
Central
si has
America?
visto o se
And
han visto algunos
also,
cambios o avances
have you
notables
noticed
entre todos
any
esos
major
actores que han estado
changes
involucrados desde
in
que se lanzó el
those
proyecto y en el que
stakeholders that
estás coordinando?
participated since the
Totalmente. Muchísimas
project was
gracias, Javier.
launched? Yes,
Por
thank you
supuesto, yo
so
creo que
much,
la
Javier.
diplomacia científica jugó un rol
I
importante en el
think that
proceso de
science
comunicación
diplomacy was
franco y directo
essential
y
in
de
the honest
confianza
and
que se tenía que lograr,
straightforward
inicialmente por el
communication
bifactor.
process, and it also created
Segundo,
trust.
los
Um,
talleres, la
Second,
formación del talento humano que se ha llevado adelante en la región a
the
través del apoyo del
workshops,
IAI, justamente
human
tiene
resource
mecanismos e instrumentos
training
de
in the
evaluación que nos
region
dan a
with the
nosotros
support of the
un
IAI.
feedback
This
interesante de
provides
cómo ha sido el avance,
very,
como
very
estaba
interesting
inicial y
feedback
cuál ha sido el
regarding
avance del recurso humano que ha
the
participado en
starting
las
point
diferentes
and
acciones de
how
formación para este proceso.
the
Queda mucho por hacer, por supuesto.
people
Siempre habrá
trained
mucho
have
por
made
hacer. Estamos
progress. Of course, there's
en un
always a lot to do.
contexto volátil, incierto, complejo y
It's an
ambiguo. Y para
uncertain,
todo esto
complex, ambiguous,
podemos
and
decir
volatile
que es no lineal. Bueno, habrá
context,
mucho por
and
hacer,
even
afortunadamente. Yo creo
non-linear.
que
So I know
el
there's so
IAI
much more to
nos
do.
va a permitir
I
al
think that the
proyecto, aunque ya
IAI
estemos
will
para algunas acciones ya de
allow us
finalización,
to
llevar adelante la formación del
um,
talento humano que siempre tiene un
train
rol
our human
de mucho
resources
valor para
who are
lo que es la
also very
transformación de
important
nuestra comunidad
for
de ciencia, tecnología y
transforming
innovación.
our
Esto ha permitido
STI
justamente que
community.
el diálogo con los distintas instancias de ciencia y tecnología en la región sea
So
directo y se puedan
we
hacer
have been able to
sinergias. Ya hay
talk
sinergias, de
to other
hecho,
people in
a
the
nivel de
region in a
colaboración
direct
tipo
manner.
convenios
We
entre
have also
un ONCIT y otro de la
created some
región.
synergies
Y esto va a
between
permitir
different
que igualmente se continúe
institutions in the region,
hay
and
interés,
this will be
gana y sobre
further
todo hay
addressed.
confianza.
There's interest, there's a
Gracias, Julián.
willingness, and there's
Si
trust.
puedo nada más hacer un punto, es felicitarlos
Thank you.
por ese proyecto, por ese
Congratulations
liderazgo
on the project and on
en el
that
que están
leadership
llevando a la comunidad de Centroamérica
as you
y
are
algunos
leading
países
the Central American community,
que están participando en estos
and
talleres y
other
que están
countries that are
avanzando este
also
concepto y
participating in
trabajando
the workshops that are advancing in
para
this
fortalecer
concept
la
and working
capacitación y las
to
capacidades dentro de la región.
strengthen
Gracias,
capacities
gracias.
or build capacities
Voy a
and
pasar
strengthen training in
de
the region
hecho
as well. Thank
a
you.
otro país importante en Centroamérica
Now, another
que
important Central
también
American country
ha sido parte de estos
that
diálogos
has
que
also been
están
part
ocurriendo en la
of
región. Voy a invitar
this
a la
these
señora Ana
conversations in the
Figueroa,
region. I would
ella
like
que
to
es
invite
diputada por
Mrs.
El
Ana
Salvador y
Figueroa,
que recientemente, y que
representative
me da mucho
from El
alegría
Salvador.
saber que El
And I'm
Salvador se
very
ha
happy to
unido
say that El Salvador has
recientemente a ser un miembro más
recently
de
become
IAI.
an
Y
IAI
la diputada
member
Ana
country.
Figueroa es el punto focal parlamentario de eso
Representative
en
Ana
diplomacia
Figueroa is
científica.
our
Ese taller
parliamentary
que
focal
coordinó
point. particular regarding science diplomacy. This workshop was held in El Salvador.
Este país donde usted, la diputada Figueroa, ha
And
asumido
Representative
el
Ana
rol como punto
Figueroa,
focal
you
parlamentario
are
es
now the
sumamente importante.
parliamentary focal point. That's a huge role.
Como le digo de una forma, porque he estado involucrado en el IAI por muchos años, me
And
da
I've
mucho
been
gusto
working with
ver
the
que hay
IEA
una
for many
nueva
years, so
segunda
I'm so
a
happy
esta
to see a
organización.
new country
No
joining
sé si
the
usted tenga
organization.
una presentación, también algunas
Do you have
diapositivas,
slides
o
to
si
share,
lanzamos
or
algunas preguntas y
shall I
empezamos
just
el
ask you a few
diálogo.
questions so that we can start the conversation?
Gracias, doctor. Gracias, Garza. La verdad es que sí tenía unas diapositivas, pero creo que sería más fluido el diálogo.
Thank you.
Así que
I do have some slides, but I think
con el
it's better
diálogo.
to just have a
Excelente.
conversation.
Bueno, entonces creo que
Great.
estoy congelado ahí. Veo la
Okay.
imagen un poco
I think,
congelada.
I
Y
don't
no
know
tiene
why
nada que ver con el
my
clima
image
canadiense en
is
el que
frozen. It
toda la
has
fuerza,
nothing to
todo
do
viene
with
del norte.
Canada,
Pero no
but
tiene
it's
nada. Pero no sé
so
por
much
qué se
snow
congeló. No sé
outside.
si
But I don't know
que
why
ver.
my image
Pues
is
mire,
frozen. Okay.
dígame, ¿por qué ha sido importante que El
Why has
Salvador
it been important
cuente con un punto
for El
focal, en
Salvador
este
to
caso
have
usted,
a
en la
focal
cuestión de
point? In this
diplomacia
case, you,
científica dentro de la
regarding
Asamblea
science
Legislativa?
diplomacy within the
Bueno, la verdad es que
Legislative
vamos a comenzar por el
Assembly?
interés y por las ganas, tal como lo estaba diciendo el doctor
Okay, let's
Julián
start with
Caballero.
by the
Y es
interest
que
and the
nos hemos dado
willingness,
cuenta de
as our
la
colleague was
importancia
saying,
que tiene el
because we
IAI,
have
sobre
realized
todo
how
el
important the
trabajo
IAI
de
is, in
los medios de
particular,
articulación internacionales capaz de hacer. Así
what
que quiero
international
comenzar
coordination can do and can
agradeciendo
achieve.
esta oportunidad. La verdad es
So I would
que
like to start by
es muy
thanking you for this
importante y
opportunity.
estoy muy emocionada de
It's
poder
very
participar
important, and I'm
en este
very
tipo de encuentros y sobre
happy
todo
to
de poder
participate in
compartir
this
las
type
buenas
of
experiencias
meeting,
que
in
nosotros hemos
particular
tenido
to
hasta el
share the
momento.
experiences
Quiero
we've had
felicitar de
so
verdad
far.
al IAI por ese liderazgo enorme
Congratulations to the
en
IAI
promover
for the
la
huge
diplomacia
leadership to
científica.
promote
La verdad
science
es que el
diplomacy.
lanzamiento de este currículum, de este taller
Launching
online ha sido
this,
sumamente importante, sobre
the
todo para
launch of this
diseminar más
course, of this
el
curriculum,
tema de la
has been
diplomacia
essential to
científica.
further
Quiero
communicate
también
science
agradecer a la
diplomacy.
Universidad de Sao Paulo, que es mi querida universidad. La
Also,
extraño
thank you so much
muchísimo
to University of Sao
y de
Paulo,
verdad
my
que
dear
a
university.
profesor
I really
Amancio
miss
quizá
it.
no
And Professor
pude
Amancio,
saludarlo, pero bueno,
I couldn't
él
say
también
hello,
fue
but
mi profesor en la
he was
USP, a la
also
profesora
a
Janina Onuk
teacher of
también,
mine.
a Gaby
Professor
Pereira,
Janina
que
Nook,
he
Gabi
trabajado
Pereira
con
as
temas
well.
desde,
We've worked on
desde
these
2018,
topics
19, que estaba
since
todavía en Sao Paulo.
2018,
Y obviamente a
2019, when I was
Marcella, a
in Sao
Claudia,
Paulo.
todo el personal del IAI,
And
de
of
verdad,
course, Marcela,
son páginas
Claudia, the
maravillosas.
entire
Gracias,
IAI
gracias
staff. You're
por
wonderful people.
impulsarnos a nosotros
Thank you so
como
much
país a querer
for
más. A los
encouraging us
panelistas,
as a country
gracias de verdad
to grow.
por compartir todas
Thank
estas
you to the
experiencias
panelists for
y sobre
sharing all
todo
these
por
experiences, and in
ser parte de
particular,
este conjunto de
for
personas
being
que estamos
part of this
en
group
varios
of
países,
people.
pero que tenemos un solo objetivo.
We
Y
are
bueno,
located in different
así me lo
countries, but
decía
we
el
share
doctor
an
Caballero
objective. And as
en
Dr.
este evento
Caballero
en
was
El Salvador
saying,
tuvimos
in El
un
Salvador,
taller
we
de
did
diplomacia
have a
científica
science diplomacy
abierta e
workshop,
inclusiva que fue
open and
totalmente
inclusive
un
science
éxito.
diplomacy
Se contó con
workshop. It was
expertos
a huge
internacionales, que fue
success.
una fuente de información maravillosa. Se contó también
We had
con
international
tomadores de
experts that
decisión,
were a
que eso es
wonderful
algo
source of
sumamente
information.
importante porque no podemos dejar de
We
hacer
also had
este
decision
tipo de
makers,
diálogo
and that was
solamente entre
important because it's
nosotros.
impossible to
Tenemos que
have
sí o
this
sí
conversation if it's just
hacer ese
us.
puente, construir ese
We
puente
need
para que
to build
con
that
otras
bridge
esferas de la sociedad podamos
so
entendernos.
that
A
we
veces parece
can
que estamos divorciados
interact
entre
with
la
other
academia,
areas
la
of society.
política,
Sometimes
etcétera.
there seems to be like a
Pero la
divorce
verdad es que tenemos
between the
que entender
academia,
que hay una sola
politics,
forma de trabajar
etc.
y es juntos,
But
no
there's
que
just
contrarios,
one
sino
way to work together.
haciendo
Otherwise,
esfuerzos por separado. Y si hacemos
we
eso, obviamente
are
los
working
resultados van a llegar
separately. And if
mucho más
that's the
tarde y
case,
probablemente no sean igual de
results will
efectivos.
take much longer
También se
and
contó
won't
con la
be
empresa
as
privada, lo
effective.
que es
We also
maravilloso,
had
en
a
el mismo
private
sentido
company, the private sector
integrar a todas
participating,
estas esferas que
which
tienen
was wonderful
pues,
because we were
que son
able
el
to
engranaje, ¿no?, de nuestras
integrate
sociedades.
these
Obviamente tenemos que fortalecer estos diálogos juntos y
different spaces. So thank you so much and congratulations again, because we are now gradually understanding what actually science diplomacy is, how we can use science diplomacy to address these challenges, which are not domestic challenges, they're not Central American, they're global challenges. So we must work together. And I would also like to talk about another type of diplomacy, which is parliamentary diplomacy. We're also harnessing these spaces to bring science diplomacy to parliamentary forums, such as the Latin American and Caribbean forum. We're also working with Parlamericas, which is also an interparliamentary forum, including different congresses and assemblies from the 4 Americas. So this is a very important space with decision makers and experts, and we can now have these conversations to set common working agendas. And in the case of El Salvador, we have worked within the parliament and among institutions in the country, because when it comes to STI topics, some institutions are also highlighted. So it's very important for us to talk about these topics. In El Salvador, we have worked with the CONICET, which is our STI leader, also the Environment and Natural Resource Ministry, given the topic. And also the fact that we need data scientists to make these evidence-based decisions. And that's what's most important to us. Having access to this network of specialists. And as a government in any of the institutions, we should be able to implement this framework in an informed way. Science should be useful for us as a foundation to make decisions. It might sound absolutely logical, but it's so difficult to actually achieve. So that's what we're trying to do. I'm also part of the academic council of our José Gustavo Herrero Diplomatic Institute. It works under our Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and it trains the people that represent us in our embassies and consulates. Within the institute, we are also working on a science diplomacy policy. And we do have some ideas. We would like to focus on the science diplomacy policy by attracting our own diaspora, the experts around the world, our experts. But given the social and political situation here, they find it very difficult to return. And it's difficult for them to find a position here. However, these are Salvadorians that are experts in their countries. They are successful. So we want to include them in our network so that they can help us make decisions based on their knowledge. And also not just our scientific diaspora. We also want to include our consular and diplomatic representatives so that they can also work with science diplomacy. Of course, they work with different types of diplomacy, trade diplomacy, cultural, sports, etc. But this is very important. Why? Well, in particular, given the national approach we have nowadays, which entails focusing on science Our Congress has approved several temporary decrees to encourage people working in the area. But we cannot do this if we're not together. We need to be on the same page to have this conversation. It needs to be an honest, dynamic conversation. And it's very important for us to share an objective, which is our economic development and human development. It has been very important for us to be the focal point. For me, sorry, because I come from the academia. So my main mission has been to strengthen science diplomacy in the academic sector, in the scientific sector and the political sector, because talking to my colleagues about this gives them more information. But not only that, it teaches them that this is a tool that they can also use. So I think this is truly important. Especially, we should remember something very important. The decisions we make must be evidence-based. I would like to tell you about a successful case. We have passed the human mobility law. We didn't have this kind of law. We have considered all the stages of the migration cycle, leaving a country, transit, arrival, and returning to your country, which is very important. But this has been done based on the scientific method. This is very important, and I'm very proud of this, because it's also one of the topics I am passionate about, migration. But we worked with a focus population, we interviewed them, we analyzed the data, and we made decisions based on scientific evidence. And I think that that is a huge advance, but we need to generalize this. Thank you so much, our representative. That's music to my ears. Congratulations on this approach and leadership. I would like to have more time to ask you more questions, but now I'd like to give the floor to our next and final speaker.
Esta mañana, tarde, que es la doctora Agustina Salvati.
We have here Dr. Agustina Salvati, who is the International Cooperation Coordinator at CONICET, Argentina. Agustina leads international cooperation in one of the strong scientific communities in the region, in South America. Agustina, I think she does have some slides.
Si podemos hacerlo lo más sucinta posible, se lo agradecería.
If you can be as brief as possible, please. Thank you. So that we can have a conversation afterwards. Yes, of course. Okay, let's go directly to the topics I wanted to discuss today. And if there is time, we can talk about CONICET and what we do, and maybe we can share some case studies. Good afternoon. Thank you for this invitation, for the space. Thank you for organizing this, Claudia and Javier for moderating, and thank you to our colleagues as well. It's a pleasure to listen to you. Three main ideas regarding science diplomacy. And this course, why do we need to build capacities in science diplomacy? Why training, why people should be trained from the region and for our region's objectives. And finally, why it is essential to articulate science, institutions, and policy with strategic perspective for Latin America and Caribbean to address our social and productive needs.
con imágenes de lo que fue mi primera
Here you can
experiencia en
see
diplomacia
some
científica en el
images
Almirante de
of
San
my
Pablo,
first
fue por mi universidad de
experience
CONICET,
in
que
science
recordarás
diplomacy
muy bien.
in Sao Paulo
Bueno, en
2019
relación
with
al
Anna.
primer punto, los que estamos
Regarding
acá
item
ya
1,
manejamos o tenemos cierta
if we are
familiaridad
here,
con lenguaje de la
we
diplomacia
already know
científica
what
y
science
sabemos que existe un
diplomacy is
consenso
about,
presente
and
sobre
we
el
know
valor de
that
la
there is
agenda
growing agreement
UNDRIP,
regarding
y esto lo
the
destaco en
value of
línea
this
con lo que
agenda.
mencionó Leire hace unos minutos.
This
Creo
has to
que
do with
no debemos
what
dar nunca
Leire
por
said a few
sentado
minutes
que
ago.
ya
We
está
should never
instalada,
take it
sino
for
que debemos
granted that
reproducir y multiplicar estas oportunidades de formación.
this
Entonces, en
is
ese
something
sentido
people know
celebro
about. We need to multiply
tanto la
the
USP
training
como IAI
opportunities.
hayan unido
So it's
fuerzas
great that the
para
University of Sao Paulo and the
generar esta
IAI
nueva
have
instancia.
joined
Por otro lado,
forces to
la
create these
creación de
schools.
capacidades en diplomacia científica implica formar personas que
Also,
puedan
science
moverse con
diplomacy
solvencia en
capacity
este espacio de
building
interfaz
implies
entre
training
ciencia
people
y
that
política
can
exterior, en el sentido de política y
uh,
también de desarrollar
navigate this
policies
interface between
internacionales,
foreign
como en este caso también
policy,
me toca desde
science,
el
and international
CONICET,
policies, in my
y
case
por
in particular at
supuesto
CONICET.
que estos agentes tengan la capacidad de traducir ese diálogo
And of course, the
en planes de
stakeholders
acción
have the
concretos.
capacity
Y
to
creo que ahí la
translate
diplomacia
this
científica es
conversation
el conector
into
de ese gap
uh,
entre las grandes ideas que pueden traer
true
nuestros científicos
project, because the
y
idea is to
el
combine
momento de
our
diseñar un
scientists'
instrumento
ideas
internacional
and
para la ciencia y la
what it takes
tecnología.
to design
Por
an
otro lado,
international instrument for science
los diálogos entre
and
ciencia y
technology.
política suelen darse en contextos
Usually,
complejos, como el que
science and
estamos atravesando por
policy
distintos motivos en la región, y cada uno tiene sus
work
propias
together when there
características.
is a crisis, for
Y creo
instance,
que
in our
también los
region
estudios
as
de
well.
caso que
And I
aportan
think
en
that
este curso
case
pueden dar
studies
herramientas muy
provided in
concretas
the
para
course
abordar
can
estas
provide
situaciones y
specific
verlas de
tools
una
to
manera
address these
integral, que
situations
nos permita también plantear
in a
escenarios y
comprehensive manner
estrategias
so that we
para
can
abordarlas desde la política.
share scenarios and
Y por
strategies to
otro
address
lado,
them
sabemos
from
que los científicos
politics.
tienen una fuerte actividad internacional por la
We
propia
also
naturaleza de
know
la actividad
that
científica, entonces está en nosotros ser
scientists are very
agentes que
important
puedan
given their
captar estas
activities. So it's
capacidades
very
y
important for
orientarlas
us
a los objetivos
to
estratégicos internacionales. Una vez
capture
más,
these
hablamos de
capacities and
cerrar
guide them
esta
towards
brecha
international
y de
strategic
convertir la cooperación
objectives.
internacional
The
en
idea
diplomacia
is to
científica, que creo que es este
make
gran desafío.
international
Y
cooperation into
estas
science
instancias de formación lo
diplomacy.
que creo que permiten justamente
I
ordenar,
think this kind of
profesionalizar
training
y
opportunity
potenciar
allows
lo
us
que ya
to
existe desde el
professionalize what
lugar al que cada uno le
already
toca ocupar.
exists.
Porque bueno, como dijo Ana, venimos todos de backgrounds muy diferentes, entonces
As
creo que
Anna
es
said,
una
we
buena
come from
forma de
different
unificar un
backgrounds.
criterio, de crear esa mentalidad.
It's
Siguiente,
very
por
important to
favor.
unify this criteria.
Por otro lado, en relación al punto 2, la formación desde y para América Latina. En este
Regarding
momento, me voy a poner un poco
training
nerd,
and
pero
in
es
Latin
mi apreciación
America,
y
it's very
me gusta
important
mucho para seguir esta carrera y
to
hablar de
consider
nuevos
this.
enfoques, ¿por qué no? Este autor lo
We
que
need to consider
propone
different
es
approaches.
nuclear estos tres enfoques de
The
diplomacia
idea is
científica
to
que
bring
son los que
together these
conocemos, el
science
aspiracional,
diplomacy
pragmático y
approaches,
el
aspirational,
interinstitucional,
pragmatic,
en
and
un enfoque
transactional.
trimodal que
We should
integra
include this
a los
within
tres y que tiene como novedad algo que ya fue mencionado
tri-modal
desde el principio de
model.
esta sesión, que es
And
estar
also, and
vinculado y
this was
crear
said from the beginning of the
despertar
session, the
capacidades en
idea
materia de
is to
negociación, en la ética de los intercambios, en la
build
comprensión
capacities in
del valor de
negotiation,
la
in
ciencia abierta y
understanding the value
también
of
en el
open
desarrollo y
science.
adquisición de habilidades para
And
desempeñarse en esta
also,
interfaz de ciencia,
the
política y
idea
diplomacia.
to
Creo
work in
que
this
estas habilidades
in
no solo
this
deben ser aprendidas,
science
sino
and
aprendidas también
diplomacy
con
interface.
apropiadas
So we need to
y considerando
appropriate
cada uno
these
aportando desde su lugar las
ideas by
realidades que traemos y con
contributing
las cuales
to
trabajamos en el
every
día a día, que
position
son
and to include the
cuestiones vinculadas
realities we are
a
working
niveles de
with
desarrollo
every
científico
day. And we need
municipales, a
to
la
work
capacidad de financiamiento,
with
al nivel de institucionalidad
peers,
que manejamos, porque
funding
nosotros somos
capacity, the
instituciones muy establecidas, pero que
institutionality
también
level as
estamos
well, because
en etapas de revisión
we do
permanente de los
go a long
mecanismos que
way
tenemos
back,
disponibles para
but we need
trabajar.
to pay attention to the
Y
mechanisms
bueno, y
that we have
también una
available.
discusión que es central, pero muchas
And
veces lo
also something
urgente
that is very important.
pospone lo
Many
estratégico, que es hablar
times
de qué agenda
we need to
queremos
address urgent things and we forget other
empujar
things. So
de
we need to
manera
talk about
regional y
what kind of
también de
agenda we
manera
want to
nacional.
support regionally and
Teniendo en cuenta, por
nationally,
supuesto, que nuestra región tiene
considering
recursos
that our
súper
region
valiosos. Y en
has
este sentido, creo que
valuable
la diplomacia
strategic resources.
científica
And in this sense,
también es
I
un punto
think
que nos
that
puede
science
dar una
diplomacy is a
capacidad de cierto
tool
balance de
that
poder a
also
nivel global
allows
y
us
pensar
to
en un uso sostenible de estos
reach a
recursos.
global
Y
balance,
como último
to have a strategic
condimento que propongo para
perspective.
pensar en este
And
modelo que plantea
finally,
Julián,
regarding
creo que los programas de formación,
this
cuando son
Turikian's
diseñados por
model,
personas
when
que
training courses
nacieron,
are
se
prepared by
estudiaron y
people who were
estudiaron, perdón,
born and studied or worked on science policy in Latin America or in universities. Based on relevant case studies, this allows us to contribute to strategic thinking in Latin America. And this is something that we shouldn't lose sight of. Although science diplomacy was created, or was not created as a regional concept, it's a great opportunity for us to keep developing this strategic and critical perspective of the science diplomacy concept. So I would like to close item 2 by saying that the training proposed is the one that aims to address science diplomacy from our territory, understood as political, social, economic, productive, cultural diversity. This is truly challenging for us. And the next one, please. This is us debating about the articulation of different stakeholders. In this situation, we have a lot of potential because Latin America and the Caribbean has a renowned scientific community. We work in many areas, and we have also the support of UNESCO, different technological capacities. We also have lots of potential. And we have a huge number of resources as well. But clearly, this means that those who manage science and international scientific cooperation are here to face the challenges we have. In this scenario, science diplomacy allows us to articulate these assets efficiently. This allows us to exchange different ideas to strengthen institutions, and this new way of working will be able to participate in all our activities. So I have reflected about some of these ideas. The idea is to have a long-term projection in each country. Also multilateral agreements, so that our scientific systems can become stronger and become less vulnerable. And also we need a sustainable use of the natural resources, focusing on inclusive social and productive development. Well, so this is the end of my presentation. I think that as we are Latin American, we can have a critical approach to science diplomacy. So if you read about these concepts, you can also make contributions from your experience. And there are some more uncomfortable issues that have to do with inequalities within the region, how this affects development, and the capacity to set the agendas, and also regarding funding capacities to bring, to actually put our ideas into practice. So if we manage to articulate these criteria, it's great. We will be able to stop being a marginal region. We want to be able to propose things. And that's what we are doing through our science diplomacy practitioners and managers. Thank you. Well, thank you. We don't have any more time. We're about to reach the end of today's webinar. However, I would like to start by addressing one of the important points. We launched this webinar to discuss, or in a way further promote, this curriculum that has been created by the IAI to support science diplomacy capacity building in the region. And after listening to you, I would like to say that this is a flexible approach, and the curriculum is a flexible mechanism as well. So it's an open course, it's online, it's for free, it can be implemented throughout Latin America and the Caribbean without the need to use many resources. Of course, funding is important, and there are many challenges in the region and throughout the world, given different economic or social and political issues. However, how the curriculum was developed and how the IAI is using the Science Diplomacy Center, I think this provides us with an opportunity to implement the curriculum throughout the region efficiently. I am very happy to hear about all the initiatives being implemented in the region, and also somehow they are being supported by the IAI and this new curriculum in order to advance capacity building and science diplomacy capacities as well. However, there's something I would like to highlight, as Anna said, and throughout the world, not just in Latin America and the Caribbean, there is this need to try and close the gap between knowledge, science, and decision makers when it comes to public policy making. And these are evidence-based policies. And this is something I have that also reflects what I have been trying to do with the government of Canada. There is progress, there are wonderful examples, but not all the time. One of the very important items I think you mentioned is the importance of these case studies that are based in Latin America and the Caribbean. And they reflect the community. And I completely agree with you, Agustina, because this strategic thinking will be used to develop this concept. And this thinking is based on our experience, our culture from Latin America and the Caribbean. And this is a very important foundation. Also, as Leire was saying, it's also very important to consider the experience of other regions in the world because they keep evolving. And this is very useful for all of us. We can learn from each other. And my final point has to do with the concept of science diplomacy. And as mentioned by Anna, remember the first video with Kim Montgomery? She mentioned what science diplomacy is to her, or what this institution considers science diplomacy is. But it's this unifying concept. It's something that we need to keep discussing. It's something we need to keep appropriating. It belongs to this community that participates in science diplomacy, because it's not something that is 100% set in stone, a clear definition. It is evolving. And diplomacy, as Carmen, our colleague, said, the ambassador in Costa Rica, this concept is based on our experience, and it keeps evolving, our cultural experience, which somehow helps us, because diplomacy is based on those changes and on social and political issues, geopolitical issues throughout the world, and that's very dynamic. So it's like a toolkit that evolves. The curriculum, as Gabriela Ferreira said at the beginning, it's a modular curriculum, and the curriculum evolves and improves with each experience. Well, thank you very much. I would like to give the floor to Claudia Marcella, who will close the webinar. Thank you, everyone. Of course, thank you to the panelists. It's been a pleasure to listen to you, and thank you on behalf of everyone here. Thank you for sharing your experiences and ideas. Thank you. Claudia. Thank you, Javier. Thank you to the panelists. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your perspectives. It's very useful to learn from so many areas of knowledge, different countries as well. Thank you to my colleagues. Thank you, Gavi, for telling us more about all this, for sending us more content, for sharing more content about the curriculum. And there's more information for you to learn about this content on Moodle, and also so that you can take the workshops we have created at the IAI. I would now like to give the floor to Marcella so that she can close the session. Thank you so much to everyone who has joined us. And thank you, Javier, as well, for your excellent facilitation. Thank you, Claudia. I would also like to thank you, and two final points. Thank you, everyone, because science diplomacy it takes place in the region and globally. We're countries, we're institutions, we're professionals, we are people. So each of us, each of you, the panelists, the participants here with us, we have an expertise, we have knowledge, experience at different levels: cultural, professional, disciplinary, personal levels. And this contributes to this important dialogue from science, from diplomacy, from our vision of sustainability and the missions we have in our jobs and studies. So this conversation is very important, and this conversation can lead to collaboration. It's essential, and it's the main foundation of science diplomacy. Having experiences from different sectors, the social, governmental, economic sectors, not just the executive, legislative branches, but in the future we also need to include the judiciary, which increases its participation in environmental justice issues, conventions as well, also the participation of the civil society. So every perspective enriches our vision of science diplomacy and how to use it. And the idea of training involves making science diplomacy better, at the service of a common agenda we all share, the sustainable development through ethics, equality, credibility, where science and evidence can support decision-making processes to benefit communities, governments, the industry, the productive sector. So science diplomacy, as everyone has said, is a tool, a methodology that will be more widely used. Problems are increasingly complex, and we have global problems, and we are not isolated. So we need to find innovative, flexible tools that can actually build. That's very important. The IAI, the Science Diplomacy Center, consider this flexibility and the importance of this conversation to collaborate. This is the foundation of our work, and it's what brings us here to this webinar and our future mission. Thank you to every participant in particular who has shared this more than an hour and a half. Thank you to the panelists, and also thank you to the organizers: Amancio, Luz, Leire, Jail, Ana, Agustina, Javier, also the Science Diplomacy Center team, Claudia and Gabriela. And thank you to the IAI communication team, Andrea, Irene, and the interpreters. Thank you for your work. Your work is very important to what we do. And thank you so much for supporting us today in this webinar. We hope to see you again in future webinars and hopefully in in-person workshops as well. Thank you very much for being here with us today.